Thor vs. Geirröd, Chapter 1. The trickster's bargain. The winds of Jotunheim howled like the voices of 1,000 wolves. The land of the frost giants was cruel and merciless, its mountains black with ice, and its valleys shrouded in endless storms. Few dared to walk its paths except one trickster, ever bold, ever foolish. Loki, the sly god of mischief, wandered too far into the realm of the giants. His heart beat fast, for even he knew that Jotunheim was no playground for deceit. It was not long before the watchers of Geirröd, the giant king, caught sight of him. Great hands seized the god, and he found himself dragged across the frozen stones, his wrists bound with chains of iron. For once, Loki's silver tongue faltered. Before him loomed Geirröd, tall as a tower, his skin like rough granite, his eyes burning with hatred. In his hand he held a massive iron staff, glowing faintly with the heat of the forge. "So," Geirröd rumbled, his voice like thunder rolling over stone, "a little fox sneaks into my land. A god of Asgard, caught like a rat. Tell me, Loki, why should I not crush your bones where you stand?" Loki's mind spun like a whirlwind. He bowed, he smiled, he bent his words into honey. "Great Geirröd," he said, "slayer of men, breaker of shields, I meant no harm. I only wandered too far while seeking wonders. Spare me, and I shall repay your mercy tenfold." Geirröd leaned forward, his hot breath like a furnace. "Mercy. The giants have no mercy for the blood of Odin, but perhaps you may serve me. Tell me of your thunder god. Tell me of Thor, the hammer-bearer. He has slain many of my kin. I long to see his blood spill upon my hall." Loki's heart froze. He knew Geirröd's hatred of Thor ran deep, deeper than the frozen rivers of Jotunheim. Yet the trickster also knew his own skin was worth more than any oath of friendship. "What would you have of me?" Loki whispered. A cruel grin split Geirröd's stony face. "Bring him here, but not as the god of thunder with his cursed hammer. No, trick him, strip him of his toys. Without Mjolnir, without his belt of might, without the gloves that hold his weapon, he is but a man. Lure him to me, unarmed. Then I shall end him." Loki hesitated. To betray Thor was dangerous, but to refuse Geirröd meant certain death. The giant's hand tightened on his iron staff, and sparks crackled against the floor. Loki saw only one path. "My lord," Loki said, bowing low, "your wish shall be done. I will deliver Thor into your hands, unarmed, unsuspecting. Only grant me safe passage from your land." Geirröd's laughter shook the hall. "Go, fox, do your work. If you fail, I will find you, and your bones will burn in my hearth." The chains were struck from Loki's wrists, and he was cast out into the icy winds once more. He staggered away, his thoughts racing. How could he deceive Thor, who trusted him as brother? Yet survival was all that mattered. Loki would weave his lies, as he always had. Far away, across Bifrost, the shining bridge of the gods, Asgard gleamed under the light of the sun. There, Thor, son of Odin, stood in his hall, Mjolnir at his side, his strength unmatched. He did not yet know of the treachery that was already set against him, nor the trap that awaited in the land of frost and fire. And Losiever, the serpent, ever the whisperer, was already on his way to Asgard, carrying with him the seeds of doom. Chapter 2. Loki's deception. The golden towers of Asgard gleamed beneath the eternal sky, their spires shining brighter than any star. Here, within the realm of the gods, there was laughter, feasting, and the clash of steel in the training fields. None suspected the shadow creeping among them, the trickster returning from his bargain in Jotunheim. Loki crossed the Bifrost with a smile that hid his fear. His mind burned with the words of Geirröd, echoing like iron against stone. Bring him unarmed, or burn. The fox of Asgard knew that Thor, son of Odin, would never refuse the chance for adventure. He only needed the right tale, a web of half-truths spun with silver. He found Thor in his hall, where the thunder god sat sharpening Mjolnir, the hammer that had shattered 100 giant skulls. Sparks flew from the stone as the weapon gleamed with runes of power. Thor looked up, his blue eyes bright as lightning. "Brother," Thor boomed, rising to clasp Loki's shoulder. "Where have you wandered? You vanish like smoke and return like the storm." Loki forced a laugh. "Ah, Thor, ever the vigilant. I have traveled far, seeking tidings beyond Asgard's borders, and I bring word of a feasta, grand invitation from the giant lord Geirröd." At the mention of the name, Thor's brow furrowed. "Geirröd, that blood-stained oaf, he has slain many of our kin. Why would he bid me to his hall?" Here Loki's tongue moved like a serpent's coil. "It is true that he bore hatred once, but times change, my friend. He has grown weary of war, or so he claims. He wishes for truce, for friendship even. He spoke of honoring you with gifts, with mead, with roasted oxen fit for the mightiest of gods." Thor's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering. Yet the thought of challenge, of walking boldly into a giant hall and emerging unscathed, stirred his warrior's pride. He clenched Mjolnir tightly. "If he means to deceive me," Thor growled, "I will crush him and his kin beneath my hammer." "Ah, but that is the thing," Loki said smoothly. "To earn his trust, you must go as a guest, not a conqueror. If you arrive with hammer in hand, he will see it as a threat. But go bare-handed, with only your courage, and he will honor you as kin. Think of it, Thor victory, without bloodshed, peace between Asgard and Jotunheim." Thor stroked his beard, the thought turning in his mind like storm clouds before a gale. To leave Mjolnir behind, it is no small thing, you ask. Loki leaned closer, his voice low, tempting. "But what greater test of strength is there, Thor? To walk unarmed into a hall of giants and leave with their respect. No hammer, no belt of might, no gloves of iron. Only you, son of Odin, fearless as the thunder itself." The seed of pride took root in Thor's heart. He rose, towering, his presence filling the hall. "Very well. If Geirröd dares to test me, he shall find that Thor needs no weapon to break a giant." Spoken like the god of thunder, Loki said, with a sly grin, hiding his relief. That night, the feast halls of Asgard rang with laughter. Thor drank deep of mead, boasting that he would walk into Jotunheim with bare hands and return with tales to shame even Odin's wisdom. The warriors of Asgard cheered, but whispers stirred among those who distrusted Loki. Frigg, queen of the gods, watched silently. She saw the shadow in Loki's smile and the fire of reckless pride in Thor's eyes. She spoke no word, for fate weaves threads that even the wise cannot always cut. At dawn, Thor strapped on his traveling cloak, leaving Mjolnir resting upon its stand. He fastened no belt around his waist, no gloves upon his hands. He took only a walking staff and the trust of his companion. Loki walked beside him, his heart pounding like drums of war, though his face was calm as ice. As they crossed the Bifrost, the rainbow bridge sang beneath their feet, carrying them from the golden halls into the mists beyond. Thor's voice boomed with confidence. Soon, Loki, the giants will learn that the son of Odin has no equal, armed or unarmed, and Loki, the betrayer, forced a laugh. Yes, Thor, soon they will learn. Far ahead, in the frozen halls of Jotunheim, Geirröd waited with his iron staff glowing red, his eyes blazing like a forge of hatred. The trap was set, the wolf's jaws were closing, and Thor, proud and fearless, walked willingly into the snare. Chapter 3. The journey begins. The sun rose over Asgard, casting its golden fire across the halls of the gods. The air was crisp, the sky vast and clear. Yet Thor's path led not toward peace and warmth, but into the shadowed north toward Jotunheim, the land of frost and giants. At his side walked Loki, cloaks swirling behind him like smoke on the wind. His face bore the mask of calm, but inside his chest his heart pounded with every step. He had played his part well. Thor, bold as always, had left behind his hammer, his belt, and his gloves, bringing only his courage. Loki knew Geirröd's trap was waiting. Still, he dared not show fear. They crossed the rainbow bridge, its colors shimmering beneath their feet, and descended into the wild lands beyond Asgard. The forests here were thick with shadows, ancient oaks twisted into shapes like watchful giants. The ground grew colder with each mile, frost creeping over stone, rivers turning to glass. Thor strode ahead, his laughter booming through the woods. What a fine day for a journey. The air is sharp, the wind is strong, it sings like the edge of a blade. Tell me, Loki, is Geirröd's hall far? Not far, Loki replied, his voice smooth as oil though his stomach churned. 3 days' travel at most, and he waits with gifts of gold and mead. His daughters will pour the wine themselves, or so he promised. Thor laughed louder, his breath misting like storm clouds. Ha, a fine welcome. Perhaps these giants are not so foolish as I thought. Still, I would see if Geirröd's heart is as warm as his words. They traveled across valleys where wolves howled from the ridges, and over rivers frozen solid, their surfaces slick with black ice. On the second day, as the sun sank low, they came upon a farmhouse nestled between cliffs. Smoke rose from its chimney, and the smell of baked bread drifted through the air. Inside lived a farmer and his family, mortals who trembled at the sight of the towering gods. Yet Thor's laughter eased their fear. He shared their food, breaking bread with them, telling tales of his battles against trolls and beasts. Loki sat in silence, eyes flickering like restless fire, plotting, worrying. That night, as the fire crackled low, Thor gazed into the flames. Do you think Geirröd truly seeks peace, Loki? Or is this but another trick of the giants? Loki sipped his mead slowly. Who can know the heart of a giant? Yet, if he wished you harm, why send word of feasting? Why invite you openly, without ambush? Perhaps he is weary of war. Thor nodded, satisfied. Then we shall see. If he is honest, I will drink with him as a brother. If he is false, then I will break him with my bare hands. On the third morning, they set out once more, climbing the jagged cliffs that marked the border of Jotunheim. The air grew colder still, biting at their skin like knives. The land was vast, a sea of stone and ice, with mountains rising like teeth against the horizon. As they neared the heart of the giant's realm, Thor's step grew quicker, his eagerness shining like fire. Loki, however, grew silent, his eyes darting to every shadow, every crevice where danger might hide. He knew that once they reached Geirröd's hall, there would be no turning back. That night, they camped beneath a black sky littered with stars. Thor slept soundly, his snores rolling like thunder. Loki sat awake, staring into the dark. The memory of Geirröd's voice haunted him. Bring him unarmed, or burn. Loki clenched his fists. For all his tricks, for all his cunning, there was no path left but forward. He had led the thunder god into the jaws of the wolf, and soon the trap would close. When dawn broke, pale and bitter, the two gods climbed the final ridge. There, across a frozen valley, stood Geirröd's hall, a monstrous fortress of black stone. Its towers loomed like spears against the sky, and from its windows glowed the red light of fire. Thor's eyes blazed with excitement. At last, the hall of Geirröd. Let us enter and see if the giant speaks truth. Loki forced a smile, though his heart twisted. Yes, Thor, at last. And so they began their descent into the Valley of Shadows. The storm god striding boldly into the snare, and the trickster walking beside him, bound by fear and fate alike. The journey was over. The test was about to begin. Chapter 4. The giant's hall, the valley of Jotunheim, stretched wide and bleak before them. A wasteland of stone and ice where no bird sang and no tree grew. In the center of this desolation rose Geirröd's hall, a fortress carved from black rock. Its walls were jagged, as if the mountain itself had been split open by rage and reforged with fire. From high windows, crimson light flickered, glowing like the eyes of predators waiting in the dark. Thor strode forward without hesitation, cloak snapping behind him in the cold wind. His boots struck the frozen earth with the weight of thunder, every step echoing across the silent valley. Loki followed, his face a mask of calm, though his pulse hammered in his throat. The trap was nearly sprung. As they neared the gates, two figures appeared, tall, looming, their hair like black waterfalls, and their eyes gleaming with the cold light of ice. These were Geirröd's daughters, Geirröd and Grudge, known for cruelty as sharp as their beauty. Their voices carried like the howling of winter winds. "Welcome, Thor of Asgard," said Geirröd, her lips curling in a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Our father has long awaited you. Come, enter as a guest beneath his roof." "Guest," echoed Grudge, her voice deeper, heavier, like stone grinding upon stone. "Leave behind your weapons, your shields, your god-forged tools, for in this hall all guests are equal." Thor laughed, proud and fearless. "I bring no hammer, no belt, no gloves. Only my strength walks beside me. If your father doubts it, let him test me." The sisters exchanged a glance, their smiles sharpening. Loki bowed his head slightly, as if in respect, though within his chest fear burned hotter. He knew too well that every word of courtesy was a snare. The gates opened with a groan like a dying beast, and the gods stepped into Geirröd's hall. Inside was a cavern, vast as the night sky, lit by rivers of molten fire that ran between the stones like veins of blood. The walls were carved with the scars of axes, the bones of beasts, and the skulls of men. At the far end sat Geirröd himself, towering upon a throne of iron. His hair was red as flame, his beard coarse as tangled roots, and in his hand he held a staff that glowed with heat forged in the heart of the earth. His eyes blazed like furnaces, filled with hatred long kept and barely restrained. When he spoke, the hall trembled. "Thor of Asgard, at last you enter my hall not with hammer, nor with trinkets of your father's forge, but with empty hands. Tell me, Do you come in peace, or do you come to test me?" Thor's voice thundered back, "I come as a guest, for so I was invited. But should you test me, giant, you shall find that Thor needs no hammer to crush his foes." Geirröd's lips twisted into a cruel smile. "So be it. Sit at my table, son of Odin. Eat, drink, and let us see if the strength you boast is more than words." The tables were laid with roasted oxen, barrels of mead, and fruits of strange color. Yet the air was heavy, every dish reeking faintly of poison. Thor, unafraid, seized a leg of meat and tore into it, his appetite unbroken. Loki, more cautious, pretended to sip his drink, letting the mead barely touch his lips. The daughters of Geirröd circled like wolves. Jalp leaned close to Thor, her voice a whisper, sharp as ice. "You sit in the hall of your enemy, yet you eat as though it were your mother's table. Do you not fear betrayal?" Thor wiped the grease from his beard, grinning. "If betrayal is here, let it come. My fists are ready." The giants laughed, though their laughter was dark and hollow, echoing through the hall like cracks in the ice. Geirröd raised his staff, and the flames in the rivers flared higher, casting shadows that twisted and writhed upon the walls. "Tomorrow," he declared, "we shall see if Thor of Asgard is worthy of his boasting. Tonight, eat your fill. Tomorrow, you will face the trial of Geirröd." The hall shook with the cheers of giants, their voices like avalanches crashing down mountains. Thor drank deep of his cup, his spirit burning with eagerness for the challenge. But Loki sat in silence, dread clawing at his heart. He knew the trial was no game, no feast of strength. It was a trap meant to break the thunder god. As the night deepened, the firelight danced across the iron throne, glinting from Geirröd's staff. Loki's eyes followed it, and in that moment he understood this weapon was no mere giant's club. It was a thing of fire and death, a weapon forged to kill a god. Sleep came slowly to Thor, swiftly to Loki, and not at all to the giants, who whispered in corners of the hall, sharpening blades and weaving snares. The storm had entered the mountain, but whether it would break the stone or be smothered within its walls, only dawn would tell. Chapter 5. The first trial. Dawn broke over Jotunheim, pale and cold. The sky above the mountains burned with a thin red light, as though the sun itself were wary of shining upon the land of giants. Inside Geirröd's hall, the air was heavy with the smell of ash and molten stone. Thor rose from his bed of furs, stretching his mighty arms until the timbers above creaked. His eyes blazed with eagerness, for today would bring challenge. Loki, however, woke with unease, the shadows beneath his eyes deeper than ever. Geirröd sat upon his throne of iron, his staff glowing faintly in the gloom. His daughters stood at his side, their faces beautiful yet cruel, their eyes glimmering with hidden malice. When Thor approached, the giant king raised his hand for silence. "Thor of Asgard," Geirröd said, his voice rumbling through the hall like distant thunder. "You boast of strength, of courage, of godhood. But words are wind, and wind is nothing without the storm. Show us now the truth of your might. Prove that the son of Odin is more than a braggart." Thor grinned broadly, his teeth flashing like lightning. "I welcome the trial. Name it, and let me show you the power of Thor." The sisters stepped forward, their smiles sharp as blades. Jalp spoke first, her voice smooth as ice on stone. "Your first trial is simple. God of thunder, sit upon this chair and endure." that is all. From the shadows, giants dragged forth a massive chair carved from black oak. Its frame gleamed with strange carvings, runes twisting like snakes. Thor laughed aloud. To sit, this is no trial but a child's game. He strode forward and sat upon the chair, the wood groaning beneath his weight. At first, nothing happened, but then the seat began to rise, slowly, higher and higher, as though unseen hands were lifting it. Thor frowned, shifting his weight, yet the chair climbed steadily, pressing him toward the rafters of the hall. The giants roared with laughter. Jalp and Greep had slithered beneath the seat, their giantess strength straining as they pushed upward with their shoulders. The runes carved upon the chair bound Thor's weight, making him light as air to them. Their intent was clear, to crush him against the ceiling beams like an insect. Thor growled, the sound deep and dangerous, echoing through the hall. He braced himself, his muscles nodding with power, but the chair pressed higher, the timbers above creaking as his back neared the crushing beams. Is this your strength, Thunder God? Greep jeered from beneath. Soon you will be flattened, your bones ground to dust beneath the roof of Geirröd's hall. The laughter of giants filled the hall, cruel and echoing. Loki's face blanched. He knew well that Thor, unarmed, could not break the rune's spell by force alone. Yet Thor's eyes burned brighter, and a storm gathered in his chest. With a roar, he pressed his feet against the chair's armrests and heaved upward, his power surging like a tempest. Then, with sudden fury, he slammed himself downward, driving all his might into the seat. The chair crashed back toward the floor, its legs splintering, the hall shaking with the impact. Beneath it came the cries of the sisters, Jalp and Greep, crushed by the thunder god's weight. Their laughter turned to screams as the seat pinned them to the stone floor. The giants who had cheered fell silent, eyes wide with shock. Thor rose from the wreckage, his chest heaving, his face lit with the fire of victory. If you would test me, he thundered, know this, no trap of giants, no rune nor spell can hold Thor Odinson. The hall shuddered with his voice, and for a moment even Geirröd sat still, his fiery eyes narrowed. Then the giant king slammed his staff upon the ground, sparks leaping like serpents. Enough, Geirröd roared. So you have crushed your first trial, but the storm has only begun. Tomorrow, Thor, you shall face the second trial, and we shall see if your strength endures. The giants howled again, their voices rolling like avalanches. Thor stood tall, defiant, though his muscles ached from the struggle. Loki, in the shadows, breathed a shaky sigh of relief. For now, the thunder god still lived, but the trials ahead would only grow darker. That night, as the flames of the hall guttered low, Loki crept close to Thor. You see now, don't you? These are not games, but snares. Geirröd means to kill you, not to honor you. Thor chuckled, unshaken. Let him try. Each trap he lays is but another chance to prove my might. Do not tremble, Loki. The storm does not fear stone, nor fire, nor death. But as Thor laughed and drank, Loki's eyes returned again and again to the staff in Geirröd's hand, glowing like the heart of a volcano. He knew it was not stone nor fire alone that would be Thor's true trial. It was that cursed weapon, waiting, patient, deadly. Chapter 6. The River of Death. The next dawn rose gray and bitter over Jotunheim. The winds howled through the mountains like hungry wolves, carrying with them the chill of ancient curses. Inside the dark hall, Thor awoke, refreshed, his spirit fierce as ever. Yet Loki's eyes were weary. for he had dreamed of fire, water, and death chasing them both. Geirröd sat on his throne of iron, his fiery staff crackling in the dimness. At his sides stood Jalp and Greep, though they bore the bruises of their defeat beneath Thor's crushing weight. Their gazes burned with venom, hatred gleaming like cold steel. "Thor of Asgard," Geirröd's voice rumbled, "you have survived the first trial, but strength of arm alone does not crown a god. Today you will face a river no mere stream of water, but the river of death itself. If you would leave my hall alive, you must cross it." Thor laughed, his voice ringing like rolling thunder. "A river that is your challenge. I have waded seas, sailed through storms, and drunk mead deeper than fjords. Show me this river, and I shall cross it with ease." The giant king's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Then follow, son of Odin. Let us see if the waters will welcome you." The river awakens. They led Thor and Loki out of the hall, through jagged paths and cliffs of black stone, until the roar of rushing water filled their ears. Before them lay a river unlike any Thor had seen. Its waters churned with unnatural fury, black as ink, frothing white with foam. Boulders tumbled within its depths, and strange shapes slithered beneath the surface things with too many eyes, too many teeth. At the far bank stood a jagged cliff, the only path forward. The bridge that once spanned the river was gone, shattered long ago by Geirröd's hand. Only the raging waters remained. "Cross," Geirröd commanded. "If you are truly mighty, Thor, walk to the far side. But beware, for this river does not forgive the weak." Thor stepped forward, undaunted. But as his boot touched the water's edge, the current surged violently, swelling higher and higher as though the river itself rose against him. Thor narrowed his eyes, sensing trickery. From the shadows, Loki saw Jalp slip away upstream. She knelt by the water, muttering ancient spells, her hands stirring the current. With her giantest strength and magic, she poured torrents into the river, swelling it into a flood meant to drown the thunder god. Thor struggles. Thor waded into the river, each step a battle. The water clawed at his legs, dragging him down, rising from his knees to his waist, then to his chest. Waves struck him like hammers, and hidden rocks battered his shins, yet he pushed forward, roaring against the flood. "Is this all you have, Geirröd?" Thor bellowed. A river cannot drown the storm, but the water climbed higher, reaching his shoulders, then licking at his beard. Foam filled his mouth, choking his words. The current tore at him, stronger than chains, pulling him beneath the surface. Loki shouted from the bank, his voice sharp with panic. "Thor, it's no ordinary river. Jalp is feeding it with her foul sorcery. She means to drown you where you stand." Thor's eyes blazed with fury as the truth struck him. His strength surged, but the flood pressed harder, dragging him down. For the first time, the thunder god felt the weight of death upon him. Thor's fury with a roar that split the mountains. Thor bent down and seized a massive boulder from the riverbed. Water surged around him as he heaved it skyward, hurling it toward the cliffs above where Jalp crouched. The rock struck with thunder, shattering the ledge and sending the giantess sprawling. Her spell broke, and the river's fury slackened. Thor surged upward, his legs driving through the water like tree trunks through earth. Step by step, he forced himself forward, until at last he climbed the far bank, drenched but unbroken. He turned back, his hair plastered to his shoulders, his chest heaving like a forge bellows. Lightning seemed to flash in his eyes as he roared across the river. "Jalp, daughter of Geirröd, You would drown me like a rat. But know this, no flood can quench the thunder. Try again, and I shall break you as I broke your sister." The giants on the far bank muttered uneasily, fear stirring among them. Geirröd's face darkened, though his eyes burned hotter than ever. His daughters glared with hatred, but also with fear, for Thor had turned their trap into his triumph. The aftermath, when Thor and Loki returned to the hall, the air was tense. The giants whispered in dark corners, their confidence shaken. Loki leaned close to Thor and murmured, "You see now, don't you? These are no fair tests. Each trial is meant to kill you, one after another. Geirröd will not stop until you lie dead in his hall." Thor laughed, his voice booming. "Let him try. Let every trick and trap come against me. I shall answer each with thunder and storm. Before long, Geirröd will learn that no giant may stand against Thor Odinson." Yet Loki's gaze lingered on the giant king's fiery staff, glowing in the shadows like molten iron. His heart whispered a darker truth. The final trial had yet to come, and it would not be river, nor chair, nor flood that would test Thor. It would be fire itself. Chapter 7. The Forge of Fire. The air in Geirröd's hall grew heavy with smoke and heat. Even before Thor rose from his seat, he could feel the giant's intent thick in the air, the promise of fire and death. Loki, sharp-eyed and wary, had noticed the same. The whispering giants no longer bothered with subtlety, their voices hissed like flames fed with oil. At last, Geirröd rose from his throne of iron. His staff glowed brighter now, alive with molten light. The giant king's voice boomed, carrying through every dark corner of the hall. "Thor of Asgard, you have walked my river and survived its wrath. You have broken the weight of my daughter's strength. But let us see how you fare against the trial of flame. Come now, God of thunder, into the forge of fire, where no storm may save you." He struck his staff upon the ground, and the floor trembled. A great iron door groaned open at the side of the hall, revealing a stair spiraling downward into crimson light. Heat poured forth, scorching even Loki's skin, though Thor only grinned, his eyes blazing with eagerness. "Fire," Thor said, his voice like thunder rolling across distant skies. "It is fitting, for what is fire but a candle beside the storm? Lead the way, Geirröd, and let me see this forge of yours." Descent into the depths, the stair twisted downward into the mountain's heart, where walls glowed with veins of molten stones. Chains clattered overhead, and the air reeked of smoke and iron. Thor marched boldly, each step ringing against the stone, while Loki lingered at his side, his face pale with unease. At last, they came into a cavern, vast and blazing. Rivers of lava flowed like serpents of fire, casting flickering light upon anvils and hammers, larger than any ship. Bellows taller than trees groaned and heaved, feeding flames that roared skyward. It was here, Loki realized, that Geirröd had forged his staff-an infernal place, where no god of Asgard had ever trod. Upon a raised platform stood the giant king, fire wreathing his staff. He lifted it high, and the forge roared in answer. Sparks danced through the cavern like swarming stars. "Behold the heart of my power," Geirröd declared. "Here, in the belly of the earth, I command fire itself. Without your hammer, Thor, what will you raise against me? The storm cannot strike where fire rules, the challenge of fire." The giant struck the ground with his staff, and from the lava rose creatures wrought of molten rock, their bodies dripping flame, their eyes burning like coals. They hissed and lurched forward, claws glowing with heat. Thor's fists tightened, his muscles coiling like thunderclouds before a storm. With a roar, he charged. His fists crashed into the nearest creature, and it shattered, fragments of glowing stone scattering like sparks. Another lunged, and Thor seized it by the neck, twisting until the fire within it burst outward like a dying star. Yet, for every creature broken, 2 more rose from the molten rivers, called forth by Geirröd's staff. The cavern filled with their hissing cries, the floor trembling beneath their steps. The heat grew unbearable, the air itself burning in their lungs. Loki shielded his face, sweat pouring from his brow. "Thor," he shouted, "you cannot fight fire with fists alone. Strike at the staff. Geirröd feeds them from its flame." Thor turned, his beard singed, his arms glowing red from the heat. His eyes locked upon the giant king, who stood laughing upon the platform, staff blazing like a captured sun. The clash with Geirröd with a leap mighty as the breaking of mountains. Thor sprang across the river of fire, landing upon the platform before Geirröd. The giant swung his staff in a blazing arc, a river of flame bursting forth to engulf the thunder god. But Thor roared and thrust his hands into the fire, forcing it aside with the strength of storms. His skin burned, yet his will was iron. He surged forward, seizing the shaft of the staff. The two clashed, giant and god, their strength shaking the cavern. Fire roared, stone cracked, and the river of lava surged higher. Geirröd's voice was a bellow of fury. "You cannot wrest this from me. The staff was forged for my hand. Alone it answers, only to fire." Thor's teeth bared in a grin, fierce as lightning. "Then let fire learn the name of thunder." With a mighty heave, Thor wrenched the staff from Geirröd's grasp. The fire that clung to it roared in rebellion, but Thor lifted it high, unafraid. The forge itself seemed to groan, its flames bowing before the strength of the storm. Triumph in the forge, Thor swung the staff, and with its own fire, he struck Geirröd. The blow landed like the crash of worlds. Flame consumed the giant king's armor, searing his flesh. He staggered, bellowing, as sparks rained like falling stars. The molten creatures shrieked and collapsed, their forms scattering back into rivers of lava. The forge dimmed, the flames retreating into silence. Thor planted the fiery staff into the stone, the cavern quaking beneath his might. He loomed over Geirröd, who knelt broken, smoke rising from his body. "You sought to burn me, giant," Thor thundered, "but fire itself bends to the storm. Remember this as you fall. Thor bows to no flame, no trick, no giant's treachery." Geirröd glared up, hatred burning, even as his strength waned. "This is not the end, son of Odin. Fire never dies, it smolders, it rises again." But Thor silenced him with a final strike, and the giant king fell into the molten river, swallowed by the fire he once commanded. Aftermath, silence fell upon the forge, broken only by the hiss of cooling stone. Loki stepped forward, his face pale, but his lips curved into a thin smile. "You see, Thor," he said quietly, "the traps were many, and the trials cruel. Yet in the end, even Geirröd's fire could not consume you." Thor grinned, staff blazing in his hand. "Let the giants of Jotunheim whisper of this day." Thor entered the forge of fire and left with its flame in his grasp. He turned toward the stair, his voice echoing in the cavern. "But our journey is not yet ended. Let us see if any remain bold enough to face me." And so, with the fire staff in hand, Thor ascended from the depths, leaving behind the broken forge of Geirröd, though in the shadows. Loki's eyes lingered on the weapon, his mind already weaving thoughts of what storms and fires together might yet unleash. Chapter 8. The betrayal revealed the forge of Geirröd lay silent behind them, its fires quenched by Thor's might. The thunder god strode upward through the winding stair, each step shaking the stone, as if the mountain itself feared him. In his hand burned the stolen staff of flame, its glow casting wild shadows across the walls. Loki followed in silence, his face hidden in the flickering light. At last they emerged into the ruined hall above, where the shattered bodies of Geirröd's daughters lay still and cold. The air reeked of ash and smoke. Thor turned to the shattered throne and sat heavily, his chest rising and falling with the fury of battle not yet cooled. He rested the staff across his knees, eyes gleaming like storm clouds lit by lightning. Loki lingered near the wall, his hands folded, his smile faint but sly. For a time, neither spoke. Then Thor's deep voice rumbled. "Strange, is it not, Loki? Geirröd knew well that I would come without my hammer. He knew that I would tread his river and face his forge unarmed. Tell me, how would a giant king, hidden deep in Jotunheim, come by such knowledge?" Loki's smile faltered. He shifted, searching for words. "The giants are cunning. They have spies, secrets whispered on the wind." Perhaps Thor slammed the staff against the ground, and the hall shook. His eyes burned with sudden fury. "Do not weave me lies, trickster. I know your ways too well. It was you who guided me here, whispering that I should leave Mjolnir behind. You who told me my belt and gloves were needless, and all the while Geirröd prepared his traps, certain that Thor of Asgard would walk into them unarmed." Loki lifted his chin, defiance flickering in his eyes. "And if I did, what then? Would you have faced this trial any differently? You are Thor, breaker of mountains, slayer of trolls. Was this forge not but another battle to you? Did you not prevail, even without your hammer?" Thor's wrath, the storm within Thor's chest, broke loose. He rose from the throne, towering over Loki, his shadow vast upon the wall. "You dare speak so," Thor roared. "You dare confess your treachery and cloak it in riddles. You would have had me burned alive, devoured by fire, broken in chains, all for the amusement of a giant king. If not for Grid's wisdom, I would lie dead beneath Geirröd's hall, and you would stand laughing over my ashes." Loki's lips curled in a sharp grin, though his eyes flicked nervously to the blazing staff in Thor's hands. "Yet you do not lie dead. You stand here, stronger than before. Perhaps I tested you, Thor. Perhaps I gave you the chance to prove your might before all Jotunheim. Would you rather live unchallenged or rise greater through the fires of trial?" Thor's fury only grew. "Do not dress betrayal in fine words. You are no maker of heroes, Loki. You are a weaver of lies, a whisperer of doom. If I were to strike you down now, the halls of Asgard would praise me for ridding them of your poison." The trickster's plea, for the first time, Loki's slyness faltered. He raised his hands in a gesture of peace, stepping lightly back. "Wait, Thor. Think carefully. If you slay me, what tales will the gods speak? That Thor, the mighty thunderer, was so wounded by a trick that he murdered Odin's blood brother. Would you bring shame upon yourself for the sake of wrath?" Thor's grip on the staff tightened, flames leaping higher. The thought of striking Loki down burned in him like the forge's fire. Yet still, A voice deep within urged caution, the voice of Odin, wise and far-seeing, who had often stayed Thor's hand when anger rose too swiftly. Loki saw the hesitation and pressed his advantage. "Besides," he said smoothly, "who guided you to Grid's hall, where you found the weapons that saved your life? Who walked beside you into the forge, unarmed and at risk of fire? If I meant only your death, Thor, I would not be standing here now." Thor glared down, the storm in him raging. "Do not twist this, trickster. You brought me to the brink of ruin, but you speak true in one thing. Odin himself has bound us, and I will not dishonor the All-Father's oath by spilling your blood this day." The oath of silence. Thor lowered the staff, though its fire still crackled. His voice rolled like distant thunder. "Hear me, Loki. I will not strike you, but neither will I forget. The day will come when your lies bring doom upon Asgard, and when that day arrives, no oath, no bond, no plea will stay my hand. You will answer for this treachery and for all yet to come." Loki bowed with mocking grace, though his smile was tight. "Then let us see if that day ever dawns, Stormbringer. Until then, let us return to Asgard with tidings of victory. After all, the giants lie broken, and the fire of Geirröd burns no more." Thor turned away, disgust heavy upon him. Yet, in his heart, a shadow remained. He had faced Geirröd and triumphed. But the greater battle lay not in Jotunheim's halls. It lay within Asgard, where Loki's schemes would fester like embers waiting for wind. The whisper of doom as they departed the ruined hall. The mountain groaned and settled into silence. Thor strode ahead, staff in hand, each step a vow of storm. Loki followed, his eyes glimmering with secrets, and in the distance, upon the horizon of fate, the Norns wove their threads. They whispered of Ragnarok, of storms and flames yet to come. They whispered of Thor and Loki, bound by blood, yet divided by doom. For though Thor had spared Loki this day, the seed of betrayal had been planted deep, and all the worlds would one day feel its harvest. Chapter 9. The road back to Asgard. The path out of Jotunheim stretched long and cold, a frozen wilderness of jagged peaks and shadowed valleys. Thor and Loki walked in silence, their breaths rising in mist that clung to the bitter air. Behind them lay the ruin of Geirröd's hall, a tomb of shattered stone and quenched fire. Ahead lay the shining bridge of Bifrost, far beyond the reach of frost and flame. Thor's steps were heavy, each stride striking the earth like the beat of a war drum. In his hand still burned the flaming staff of Geirröd, though its fire dimmed as if reluctant to leave its master's land. Loki, light-footed as ever, drifted at his side, his eyes glimmering with thought. For a long time, no word passed between them. The air was thick with the weight of what had been revealed, and Thor's silence was more terrible than any shout of wrath. At last, Loki broke it, his voice sly but soft, like a fox creeping at the edge of a hunter's fire. "Stormbringer," he said, "your anger is a thundercloud that follows us still. Yet tell me, is it not better that Geirröd lies dead? Is it not better that the forges of the giants lie broken? For all your fury, the realm of Asgard is safer now than it was before." Thor's eyes flicked toward him, hard as iron. "Do not think to soothe me with words, trickster. You may gild your betrayal with victory, but I have not forgotten. You led me into the jaws of death, and only the wisdom of Grid and the strength of my arm carried me through." Loki shrugged, his smile unbroken. Perhaps, yet, is that not always the way of the gods? Trial and peril, fire and blood? You thrive on battle, Thor. You would be restless in peace. Thor's voice rumbled like distant thunder. Peace is not the same as deceit. Remember this well. I walk the road of warriors. You, Loki, walk the road of serpents. And serpents may one day be crushed beneath the heel. The signs in the sky as they spoke, the winds of Jotunheim rose around them. Snow whirled like pale ghosts, and the mountains groaned as if alive. Thor paused, lifting his gaze to the heavens. Dark clouds gathered above, far heavier than any storm he had summoned. They rolled and twisted, their shapes curling into forms too strange to be mere wind. Faces seemed to flicker in the thunderheads grim, hollow-eyed, whispering with voices unheard. Loki, too, looked upward, his smile fading for once. The Norns are weaving, he murmured. Their threads tug at the sky itself. Do you not hear it, Thor? The sound of fate tightening around us. Thor's jaw clenched. He heard it, indeed, the low hum of destiny, a song older than gods or giants. It was the whisper of Ragnarok, the doom of all things. The end may come, Thor said, his voice like a vow. But until that day, I will not bow to fear. If the Norns weave my death, let them weave it. I will meet it with hammer in hand, as all warriors should. Loki chuckled softly, though unease glimmered in his eyes. Always so certain, brother, but fate is not so simple. Threads twist, paths cross, and sometimes even the mightiest storm can be undone by a single lie. Thor shot him a glare, but Loki turned away, humming a tune that was half laughter, half lament. Chapter 10. The Judgment of Odin. The rainbow light of Bifrost faded as Thor and Loki stepped into Asgard, the golden city of the gods. Its shining halls rose like sunlight over storm clouds, walls gleaming brighter than polished steel. Yet, though the realm stood radiant, a hush hung in the air, for word of Thor's return had already spread among the Aesir. Gods gathered in the courtyards of Odin's high hall, their eyes wide with curiosity. Frigg, fair and wise, stood beside Sif, Thor's golden-haired wife, both women watching with troubled hearts. Tyr, the one-handed war god, leaned upon his spear. Even Balder, brightest of gods, had come forth to see what fate Thor carried back from Jotunheim. At the heart of them all sat Odin Allfather, high upon his throne, Lidskjalf. His one eye burned with the light of knowledge, the other lost long ago in Mimir's well. Upon his shoulders perched Hugin and Munin, ravens of thought and memory, their black wings rustling as they whispered all they had seen. Thor strode forward, his broad frame casting a shadow across the marble floor. In his hand still burned Geirröd's flaming staff. Loki slinked beside him, his smile thin and sharp, like a knife hidden beneath silk. Thor's account, kneeling before Odin, Thor laid the staff upon the ground. His voice was steady, though thunder rumbled beneath it. Allfather, I have done as was needed. Geirröd, the giant of flame, lies slain. His hall is ashes, his schemes broken. Asgard is safe for now. A murmur rippled through the gods, but Odin lifted his hand for silence. Tell all, my son, spare nothing. So Thor spoke. He told of the river Vimar, of the giantess who hurled boulders from the cliffs. He told of Grid, who had given him her belt, gloves, and staff when he had come weaponless. He told of the flaming iron, the deadly struggle, and the moment he cast Geirröd's weapon through the heart of his foe. At last he fell silent, the hall echoing with his final words. Odin turns to Loki. Odin's single eye narrowed as he shifted his gaze. "And you, Loki, what part did you play?" Loki spread his arms wide, his silver tongue ready. "All-Father, I was the hand that opened the door. I was the one who brought Thor to the place where Geirröd's schemes might be shattered. Had I not guided him, would Geirröd not still live? Would his fires not burn hotter, his forges strike deeper?" But Odin did not smile. His ravens croaked, their voices sharp. Hugin whispered of thought, Munin of memory, and together they spoke of what truly had passed. How Loki had been caught. How he had bargained his freedom by luring Thor into peril. How his deceit had nearly cost the thunder god his life. The gods muttered among themselves, their faces darkening with anger. Sif clutched her hands, fear for her husband burning in her eyes. Tears spat upon the floor. Baldr's brow furrowed, sorrow dimming his radiant face. The All-Father's judgment. Odin rose from his throne, tall and terrible. His voice shook the hall like the roar of a storm. "Loki, Laufeyson, blood brother though you are, your treachery cannot be denied. Time and again you sow deceit among us, and time and again your schemes bring doom to your kin. You led Thor unarmed into Geirröd's trap. You bargained with giants against your own kind. This is no small mischief, it is betrayal." Loki's smile faltered, but he did not bow. His eyes flashed like fire. "Betrayal. I played my part as the Norns have woven it. Trickery is my nature, as thunder is Thor's, and wisdom is yours. Would you fault the serpent for its venom, or the wolf for its hunger?" Odin's gaze grew darker still. "Do not hide behind fate, Loki. The Norns weave, but choice lies in the hearts of those who live. And your choices drag us ever closer to ruin." A glimpse of doom at Odin's words. The air grew heavy. The Norns themselves seemed to stir, their threads whispering through the hall. Odin's one eye glowed with foresight, and he spoke in a low, dread voice. "I see further than you, trickster. I see the day when your lies will break bonds that should never be broken. I see the day when the wolf will run free, when the serpent will rise from the sea, when fire will rain from the heavens. I see Ragnarok, the twilight of gods." A shudder passed through the gods. Even Thor's great heart tightened at the sound of that word Dragnark. He gripped the staff so hard, the flames leaped higher, as though his fury alone might burn fate away. But Odin's gaze turned upon him as well. "Thor, son of Yor, bearer of storm, you too are bound by fate. You will stand against giants and serpents, and your strength shall shake the 9 realms. Yet, even you, my son, cannot outrun the end. In Ragnarok, you will meet the serpent Jormungandr, and the sea shall drown the sky in your final battle." Thor's jaw clenched. "Then let it be so. If fate decrees my death, I shall carve it upon the serpent's hide. No doom will find me cowering." A murmur of approval ran through the gods, though their hearts were heavy. The sentence at last, Odin raised his spear Gungnir, striking it against the marble floor. "This is my judgment. Loki shall not be cast out, for his place in fate is not yet complete. But let it be known, his words are venom, his counsel is poison. Trust him not, for he will bring fire to our doors before the end." The hall fell silent. Loki bowed with mocking grace, though his eyes burned with defiance. "So be it, All-Father. Keep your watch upon me, if it eases your heart. But remember, when Ragnarok comes, even your wisdom will not save you." And with that, he slipped into the shadows, leaving behind unease like the stench of smoke after fire. The gods in unease, Thor stood before Odin, his heart torn between rage and sorrow. He longed to crush Loki beneath his heel, yet the words of fate weighed heavier than any hammer. Around him, the gods whispered, fear clinging to their voices. Only Odin sat silent, his single eye lost in thoughts no one else could follow. For though he had spoken judgment, the truth lay deeper. The twilight of the gods had already begun, and every step, every battle, every betrayal drew them closer. And Thor knew in his heart that the road ahead would lead not only to victory, but to the end of all things. Chapter 11. The Prophecy of the Norns. The night after Odin's judgment, Thor could not rest. Storms rumbled above Asgard, their thunder echoing the turmoil within his heart. Though Geirröd was slain, though Asgard stood safe, the All-Father's words gnawed at him like a wolf at bone. In Ragnarok, you will meet the serpent Jormungandr, and the sea shall drown the sky in your final battle. Thor's fists clenched. His fate had been spoken, but he would not surrender to doom without answers. Thus, before dawn, he girded his strength, wrapped himself in his crimson cloak, and strode from the shining halls. His path led eastward, across the Rainbow Bridge, through realms of mist and shadow, until he reached the roots of Yggdrasil itself, the Well of Yrd. At the base of the World Tree, beneath branches that stretched into eternity, there lay the sacred Well of Yrd. Its waters shimmered with starlight, for it reflected not only the sky, but the threads of fate themselves. Around it grew white ash trees, their roots drinking from the well, their leaves whispering secrets to the winds. Here dwelt the Norns' three sisters, older than time. Ord, who sees the past, her hair as white as frost. Verdandi, who holds the present, her gaze sharp as steel. Skuld, who shapes what is yet to come, her face hidden beneath a dark veil. When Thor arrived, he found them seated at their loom, weaving with threads of gold, silver, and shadow. Each thread was a life, each not a choice, each pattern a destiny. The air thrummed with power, heavy with inevitability. The question Thor approached, his footsteps echoing like thunder across the roots of Yggdrasil. His deep voice rolled forth, Norns of fate, I am Thor, son of Odin, protector of Asgard and Midgard. I have come seeking truth. Tell me what doom awaits me. What lies ahead for the gods? The Norns did not turn. Their hands moved ceaselessly, weaving the endless tapestry of creation. At last Ord spoke, her voice like the crackle of old firewood. You already know what the past has carved. The giants rise, Loki weaves his lies, and war gathers like clouds before a storm. Verdandi lifted her gaze, eyes gleaming like steel under sunlight. The present is a knife's edge. Each choice you make now sharpens or dulls the blade that will cut the 9 realms. Then Skuld raised her veiled head, her voice cold and distant as the grave, and the future is sealed. Ragnarok comes. Nothing can turn its tide. Thor's heart thundered. Then tell me of my fate. Tell me tell me if there is hope. The vision of Ragnarok at Thor's words. The Norns touched the waters of Urd's well. Ripples spread across its surface, and visions rose like mist. Thor beheld the sky torn apart, stars falling into the sea. He saw the wolf Fenrir breaking free from his chains, his jaws wide enough to swallow the sun. He saw Loki leading the giants across the Bifrost, their weapons blazing with fire and frost. He saw Heimdall sound the Jallarhorn its call, shaking Yggdrasil itself. And then he saw himself. Thor stood upon a shore, swallowed by waves, facing the vast serpent Jormungandr. The beast rose from the sea, coils encircling the world, venom dripping from its fangs. Lightning cracked the heavens as Thor charged, his hammer crashing against the serpent's skull. Blow after blow, venom against thunder, storm against sea until, at last, Thor struck the beast dead. But even as Jormungandr fell, Thor staggered. Black venom burned through his veins. He stumbled 9 steps, then collapsed upon the earth. His eyes closed as the sea swallowed sky, and darkness claimed all. Thor's defiance. Thor gasped, his chest heaving as the vision faded. Rage surged in him, hotter than any fire. Is this all? That I fight, that I fall, that the world burns? No, I am Thor, breaker of giants, defender of men. I will not bow to fate like a lamb to slaughter. If Ragnarok comes, I shall meet it with hammer in hand and tear the sky asunder. Verdondi's gaze softened, though her hands did not stop weaving. Defiance is in your nature, Thunder God, and it is good. For though the tapestry cannot be unmade, the pattern of your thread burns brighter for it. Urd's voice followed, slow and ancient. Remember, Thor, even death can be victory, if it holds back the dark long enough for light to return. At last, Skuld whispered, her veiled face tilting toward him. And remember this, the threads of men, too, weave into the fate of gods. Midgard will not be silent in the last war. Mortal hearts will burn alongside divine flame. The departure the Norns fell silent, their weaving never ceasing. Thor stood, his breath still ragged, his spirit burning with storm. He looked into the waters once more, but no further visions came. Fate had spoken, and fate would not be moved. With a growl like thunder, Thor turned from the well of Ord. His steps shook the roots of Yggdrasil as he strode away, the storm gathering once more in his heart. He knew now what awaited him: serpent, venom, death. Yet, he also knew this: he would not cower. He would fight until the last breath, until the last spark of lightning faded. And if the 9 realms must burn, then by his hand they would burn brighter than ever before. Above him, the world tree rustled, its leaves whispering secrets to the stars. And somewhere far away, the serpent stirred in the depths of the sea, as if it too had heard the prophecy spoken this night. Chapter 12. Twilight before the storm. The skies above Asgard burned with crimson light as the sun dipped beneath the horizon. A strange silence lay upon the realm of the gods, a hush that seemed to weigh heavy on every heart. It was the calm before a storm, and all in Asgard felt it, though none would speak it aloud. Thor, son of Odin, strode through the golden halls, of his steps echoing like distant thunder. The prophecy of the Norns still coiled within his mind like a serpent of shadow. Though he had slain Geirröd and saved the gods from ruin, victory tasted bitter, for he knew it was but a single stone against the avalanche of doom yet to come. The hall of the gods, in Odin's hall, the gods gathered. There was Frigg, sorrow etched upon her face, for she knew all too well the weight of prophecy. There was Frey, restless and uneasy, his thoughts on the giants beyond the borders. There was Tyr, his one hand resting on his sword, his gaze sharp with grim resolve. Even Loki stood among them, silent for once, his sly eyes shadowed with secrets only he could fathom. Odin himself sat upon his high throne, Hugin and Munin perched upon his shoulders. His one eye gleamed, but his face was heavy with thought. He had heard the rumblings from Jotunheim, from Muspelheim, from the deep sea where Jormungandr stirred. He knew the end drew near. Thor raised his voice, strong as rolling thunder. Brothers, sisters, kin of Asgard, hear me. Geirröd has fallen, but his death is but a spark in the storm that comes. I have seen it with my own eyes, in the waters of Erd. Ragnarok approaches, the serpent rises, the wolf breaks its bonds, and fire shall consume the sky. Yet I say, the Sif we are to fall. Let us fall as gods, with hammers and swords in our hands, with the storm at our backs. A murmur spread through the hall, part fear, part fierce resolve. The gods knew what was spoken was true, yet to hear it declared aloud was like a blade to the heart. Odin's decree, Odin rose, his spear Gungnir in hand, his voice deep as the roots of Yggdrasil. Thor, my son, your courage honors Asgard. The day will come when Jallarhorn shall sound, and the last war shall begin. Until then, we must stand ready. We must guard the realms of men, for their fate is woven into ours. Let Midgard thrive while it may, for in the twilight of the world, their fire will join ours against the dark. He turned his gaze upon each god in turn. Do not despair, for though the Norns weave the tapestry, even they cannot say what rises from the ashes of doom. Fight well, and even the end may be a beginning. The oath of Thor. Thor stepped forward, Mjolnir gleaming in his hand, its runes alight with fire. He lifted it high, the hammer catching the glow of the setting sun. By this hammer, I swear, he thundered, his voice echoing through every hall of Asgard. When Ragnarok comes, I shall meet the serpent Jormungandr with all the fury of the storm. I shall strike him down, though venom burns my veins, though death takes me after. For as long as I breathe, no giant, no beast, no flame shall touch Asgard without tasting the wrath of Thor. The gods lifted their voices in answer, a great cry that shook the golden halls. It was not the cry of despair, but of defiance, of warriors who knew the end yet stood unbroken before it. The twilight. That night, Thor stood alone upon the walls of Asgard. The stars glimmered faintly, but clouds gathered on the horizon, heavy with storm. He gazed out toward Midgard, its lands quiet beneath the watchful eyes of the gods. He thought of the men and women who tilled the soil, who sang songs around their fires, who prayed for the protection of the Aesir. It was for them he fought, for them he would one day fall. A wind stirred, carrying with it the faint hiss of the sea. Thor's eyes narrowed. Far below, in the depths of Midgard's oceans, he could almost feel the serpent's coils shifting, vast and terrible. Jormungandr was stirring. The hour drew closer. And in Muspelheim, the fire giant Surtur sharpened his flaming blade. In Jotunheim, the giants raised their spears. In Hel's dark realm, the dead stirred uneasily. And in the shadows of Asgard itself, Loki smiled faintly, his thoughts hidden, his heart aflame of secrets. The closing of the saga, as dawn's first light crept across the sky, Thor tightened his grip upon Mjolnir. Lightning flickered in the distance, silent and far, yet promising storms to come. He breathed deep, his heart a furnace of defiance. Yes, Ragnarok would come. Yes, the serpent would rise. Yes, he would fall. But until that day, Thor, son of Odin, would stand. He would fight. He would bring the storm. And so ended the tale of Thor and Gerdnot, with despair, but with thunder's promise. For though fate is written, the heart of a god burns brighter than any thread. brighter even than the twilight before the storm.